for joining in. Myself, Sridharan, Senior Systems Engineer at Deco Software. Today, I'll share my thoughts on how AI can help HF engineers and enhance usability during the phases of medical device design. So this would be the quick agenda. We'll be growing across each. So towards the end, I'll share the details about what services we offer in the discussed area. With a quick introduction, artificial intelligence is a mission-based system that can make predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing real or virtual environment. So prioritizing usability engineering isn't just about meeting compliance, it's about enhancing the safety, efficiency, and accessibility of medical devices. In a clinical perspective, AI plays a pivotal role in areas such as clinical research, process optimization, helping radiologists to evaluate scans, detect early signs of health degradation through monitoring vitals. So, for example, just consider an intensive care unit. Healthcare professionals are exposed to over 1,000 alarms per shift, and it could cause alarm fatigue, disruption of care process, and it would be difficult for the clinician to attend the patients. So this is where HF would come into role on helping each of them to understand how people interact with the technology and study how user interface design would affect the interaction with the technology. So before we start with the topic, let's have a quick poll. So just for example, observe a patient monitoring system or an infusion pump. If there is going to be some advancement in technology and a refinement in user interface, what could be the possible usability issues a user might face? The poll would be available on your end. So you have 4 options listed. As human factors engineer, what would be the best approach to address usability concerns before market release? So the possible options are remove touchscreen controls, conduct additional usability tests, simplify the menu layout with larger touch targets and improve voice recognition algorithm, proceed with the current design since most users were able to operate the device successfully. Yeah. So the most appropriate answer would be simplifying the menu layout, add larger touch targets, and improve voice recognition algorithm. Instead of creating an interface that is very technically advanced, we need to make sure like the user interface, it's at the ease or there is no sort of confusion while the device is being used. Even though we are conducting additional usability studies with some advancement in technology, which has redefined the user interface from a previous version, it would be difficult for the user to understand what has been changed, and some sort of difficulty would always be present. So moving next, we'll look into what are the basic human factors principle that needs to be considered whenever we are integrating AI. AI has emerged as a transformative force, but then we need to understand that we need to move from a technology-centric perspective towards a system perspective. So it should not be only on a technology perspective. We need to make sure like the advancement that we are putting in whenever we are adding in AI is addressing concerns on a system perspective as well. So the first would be situation awareness. So whenever there is going to be a device that is designed, there is always multiple design options that needs to be put in instead of working on one particular design. So we need to make sure like the design option need to consider how AI can support rather than erode people's situation awareness. So we need to make sure like the device is going to cater to the people need rather than just making a technical advancement. And the next important factor is workload. The impact of AI on workload needs to be assessed. So if there's going to be a technical advancement, we need to make sure like this particular technology is not going to burden the user or increase the workload of the user, or even the cognitive thoughts or the cognitive ability should also not be burdened. So we also need to make sure like there is not an increase in workload whenever we are inducing AI. And the next is automation bias. So we need to consider strategies. So strategies needs to be considered to guard against people relying uncritically on AI. So AI is going to be an assistive mechanism. It is going to give us some suggestion, but also we need to make sure like we aren't completely relying on AI. So it is just going to be a suggestive mechanism, and it is at the discretion of the user whether to accept it or not. And the next important parameter is explanation and trust. So whenever we are getting any result or any response from AI application should explain their behavior and allow users to query in order to reduce automation bias and support trust. So instead of directly following or directly depending on AI, we also need to make sure like why this output has been thrown out, and we also need to make sure like that particular output has some defined meaning so that we can observe and accept it. And the next is human AI teaming. AI application should be capable of good team working behaviors to support shared mental models and situation awareness. So it should be a win-win situation for both the human and the technology, and one should not be working completely. The next is training. So whenever there is going to be a new concept that is going to be put into the device, whether it is going to be an upgradation in technology or a change in user interface, we need to make sure like there is always going to be some sort of training given to the user group. So people would require opportunities to increase their skill set when AI is going to be introduced, and attention also needs to be given to the design of effective training that is very accessible and flexible. So the staff or clinicians or nurses who are going to work on the device, be it a layperson themselves, should be provided with protected time to undertake training during their work hours as well. And the next is relationship between people. So the impact on relation needs to be considered. So for example, whether staff will be working away from the patient or they are going to be along with the patient whenever AI is going to be introduced. So that also should be considered. So if there is going to be a patient monitoring system that is going to involve some amount of AI, that there would not be any possibility for a staff nurse or a clinician to stay beside the patient. This importance should also be considered so that the healthcare of the individual is not degraded. The next is ethical issues. So this is very critical parameter. AI in healthcare can raise multiple ethical challenges, including factors such as fairness, bias. So we need to make sure like the AI model that is going to be deployed has protection of privacy, respect each of the users' autonomy, and realization of benefits and possible minimization of harms is going to be the important parameter. Next, let's quickly look into how AI can be integrated into HF. So AI technology are transforming healthcare. So be it diagnostic, therapeutic, or prognostic, we have seen the involvement of AI on a clinical perspective. But if AI is going to be into a human factors design, a device design perspective, we need to consider what are the important areas where AI can have a definite stamp promoting the device design. So the breadth of applications of AI has continuously and rapidly increased in few years. By automating certain aspects of the device design process, AI allows human factors engineer to focus on higher level analysis, perform a better decision making, and improving overall efficiency. So human factors engineers play a very critical role on identifying and mitigating ethical issues in AI, ensuring that the technologies are developed responsibly and ethically. So let's look into each of the parameters in detail. So let's start with enhancing user experience. So users will expect a device and the device component to operate in the same manner when they are using it for the first time and the nth time. So enhancing user experience is one important quality. So this is where AI can help us to evaluate vast amount of data. So with the amount of PMS data that is available, we do have multiple serious, non-serious incidents, usability failures, supplier recalls, or multiple CAPAs that could be generated during a device life cycle. So evaluating these devices on a human perspective could always generate possible errors. So involving AI in here can be a friendly parameter to give us some input on how a device design can be refined to meet the real-time requirement. So AI can analyze vast amount of data to predict user needs and optimize device interface for better usability. So HF here would focus on designing systems that are intuitive, user-friendly, minimizing user errors, and improving satisfaction. So while integrating AI, it will always give us insights on how we can refine a device interface to ensure that they align with the user expectation and capabilities. And the next is streamlining data analysis. So whenever it is going to be a healthcare data, it is going to be very huge, and there's not going to be similar data across every particular output. So the data volume is going to be enormous. It is going to be an unstructured data, and it would be difficult for us to quantify. So while integrating AI, we can have faster decision making, better compliance, improved design iteration could be a possibility, so that we can concentrate more time on bringing out multiple designs, and there will cost and time can also be minimized, and manual data processing efforts can also be minimized. And the next is improving safety and reliability. Unfortunately, whenever we are considering healthcare technology, there are multiple technologies that are clinically effective at a functional level, but because of a design failure or usability issues are not met, there could always be a source of degradation in health benefits. So improving safety and reliability is one prime aspect. This is where AI algorithm can help us to detect anomalies, predict possible failures by providing real-time feedback to users, and enhancing the safety of medical devices. AI can augment human factor practices by continuously monitoring a device performance. We can monitor how effectively a particular task is performed. If a particular task is consuming more time, we can very well work on the task, and we can refine user experiences so that the healthcare is benefited and the user experience is at the maximum. And the next is customization and personalization. So with the advancement in healthcare, there have been devices that are being designed to cater to specific needs. So AI can help us to personalize medical device based on individual user data, adapting to functionalities to meet specific needs. So whenever there is going to be an orthopedic device or an assistive device that is going to cater to every single individual, their needs, their requirements can be understood, and depending upon their demography, whether it is going to be an adult male or female, their height, their geometry, everything can be considered, and this data can give us some good insight during the phases of device design. So HF would aim to accommodate diverse range of users, including those with different abilities, different preferences, and various contexts of use. So AI allows dynamic adaptation of devices, providing personalized experience that human factors engineer can design and evaluate for effectiveness and user comfort. And the next is data-driven design. So whenever we are working on healthcare, be it on a clinical data or be it on a device design perspective, there is always a huge amount of data that needs to be evaluated. So data collection protocols should ensure that relevant characteristic of the intended patient population are considered, whether they belong to an adult male or female group, or whether it is going to be for a pediatric or a neonate group, and to which race they belong from, the ethnicity, the measurement inputs, everything needs to be considered, and everything should be considered in an adequate size and adequate sample. So we need to have huge amount of sample so that the device design can cater to a larger group. So this is very important to manage bias, promote appropriate and generalized performance across the intended population, and assess usability and identify circumstance where a model could underperform. So if there is going to be a failure for a specific group of people, we can very well identify it at a very early stage of the device design, which can minimize the possible failure, a usability failure or a design failure to occur when the device is put into market. And the next is efficiency in development. So whenever we are considering efficiency, there always goes a usability testing for medical devices. So usability testing again would involve multiple factors such as formative, summative, and we go in for multiple amount of refinements during the phases of device design. So whenever there is going to be a usability failure that is identified during a formative study, we again come back to the device design phase, refine the design, and then perform the study again. But whenever we are involving AI, it can help us to automate repetitive tasks. So we can bring out a simulated environment, address issues at a very early stage, and then consider the device for a formative study, can help us to bring back any design flaws, or coming back and forth again can induce involve more amount of cost and time. So HF process would involve such as iterative testing and refinement are essential, but then involving AI can help us to minimize the time taken, and can also promote multiple design iteration, and we can come out with the best possible design which has the minimal usability failures or nil usability failures to occur. And the next important parameter is ethical consideration. So one major ethical issue is bias poses significant privacy risk as well. So addressing these ethical issues is crucial for responsibly technological advancement. By implementing effective mitigation strategies, we can ensure AI benefits society while minimizing harms. Now let's quickly look into how integrating AI in HFE with real-time use cases. So there is no doubt AI will dramatically reshape healthcare industry, but then we do have certain factors on where AI can be improved so that we can have a win-win situation by involving AI into medical device design phases. So first, let's start with user interaction. So user interaction in medical device is a very crucial area as it focuses on designing interfaces that are safe, efficient, and intuitive. So the goal is to make these devices easy to use, reduce errors, and improve overall patient safety. So just consider for an example a touchscreen that is going to be designed for an insulin pump. So AI would help us to process interaction data. So it is always going to be a clinician or a support staff or even a layperson if the device is going to be used at home. There is going to be multiple amount of interaction between the device and the user group. So AI can help us to predict which particular task is consuming more time than the consumed time it would require. So whenever there is going to be a larger amount of time taken, obviously the healthcare of the individual would be taken a hit. Or if there is going to be the turn on and turn off button placed in a close proximity to the volume adjustment button, there could always be a possibility to press the turn on turn off button instead of administering the volume of drug. So it would always be very critical if we are giving an incorrect input, and this is where AI can help us to give some suggestive techniques or suggestive ideas on where can we identify failures at a very early stage, and this could help us to save time by quickly analyzing large data sets and having faster iterations. And the next is rapid prototyping and iteration. So the primary goal for any HF engineer would be to identify usability issues before committing to full-scale development. So rapid prototyping would help us to reduce risk, reduce usability-related failures, help us to validate user needs before we finalize on a design, and lowers development cost by catching issues early. So, for example, consider an ECG monitor. AI can give us various layouts. So, a ECG monitor would be monitoring the PQRST waveform, the pulse rate, heart rate, and blood pressure at times as well. So, defining or creating a user interface is quite challenging, and we need to make sure the technology upgradation that is going to be put in is not going to is not going to pamper or cause some sort of discomfort to the user group. So AI can give us multiple suggestive outputs, and we can rank which has the best user experience, and that can be taken for the designs henceforth. And the next is usability testing. This is a very critical step in medical device design process that ensures the device is operated safely, effectively, and efficiently. So this usability testing would involve formative and summative phases, and involving AI here can predict user errors based on historical data and can predict patterns where there could be a possible usability failure that can be occurred based on the complaints that have been recorded. So as I said earlier, the PMS data is going to play a very critical role for any device design. So be it a novel design that is going to come, or be it an upgradation in the version of a particular device. So understanding what sort of PMS data has been collected, whether that was a mechanical failure or whether it is due to design or whether it is going to be a usability failure, identifying this at a very early stage, even before formative evaluation, can help us to minimize time, bring out a better design, and also can reduce the amount of cost that is being involved. So usability testing involvement, when we club it along with AI, is going to be a very good space where we can speed up the testing process, reduce cost by minimizing the need for physical prototypes and live participants early on. And the next is personalizing device design. So interfaces should be in such a way that we are meeting each of the user need, the user preference, their skill level, and the cognitive ability. So one thing should be considered: we must not increase the workload, and we must not put burden on the cognitive ability of every single individual who is going to work on the device. Also, we need to make sure the device design is going to support elderly patient and visually impaired people as well. So this is where AI can help us to suggest some design mechanisms on how a device user experience can be enhanced. Say if it is going to cater to an adult elderly people, how we can adjust the font size, how can we improve the voice control, and how can we provide some sort of active haptic feedback. So just for an example, consider a blood pressure monitor. AI can here analyze data and give us output with larger text sizes and give us some voice prompts for better accessibility. And the next is addressing usability risk. So this is where there could be multiple possible recalls or failures whenever, like, if we fail to address usability risk during the phases of medical device development, then it would be very difficult for us to get a win-win situation for the device in market. So usability risk in medical device refer to user related issues that can lead to error, inefficiency, or safety hazards during the device operation. So this is where AI can help us to predict where can we place a power button on a ventilator. Say suppose in case of adjusting the volume, say if we are turning it off, it can have a very serious impact on the individual. So AI can help us to recommend where can we relocate a button to a lesser accessible area, so that we are not even without knowing us, we are not performing an error, a usability error. So by integrating AI into medical device process, usability engineers can create safe, more efficient, and user-friendly device. So AI is not only going to reduce development time, but also ensures that devices are tailored to the needs of a diverse user group, ultimately improving the healthcare outcome. Next, we'll look into some real-time examples where AI can generate or assist HF engineers on a documentation perspective as well. Till now, we have seen how HF engineers can be assisted by AI on a design perspective. But now let's look into how HF can be assisted by AI on a documentation perspective as well. AI still stands as a powerful tool, but they do have several limitations, and they do have some lack of true understanding, limited creativity, ability to reason like humans as well. So let's look into some real-time examples where AI can possibly fail, but then can be taken as a suggestive mechanism. So while we are creating a use specification document for a medical device, we do draft intended medical purpose, where we'll be adding the device functionality, the medical condition, we'll be adding the what is the possible intended effect of the device, and what are the clinical benefits that we are gathering. And next we move on to the intended users. So whenever we are adding an intended user group, we need to make sure like we are adding the primary user group and the secondary user group as well. So just for an example, consider a syringe that is going to be used in an operating room. So it is not going to be the clinician who is directly going to handle the syringe, unpack it, load the drug, and then administer it on the patient. There could always be a source for secondary users. So the clinicians or the support nurse who are going to work along with the doctor would be loading the drug, unpacking it, and then sharing it with the doctor so that he can administer the drug, and then again it is discarded by the secondary user group. So we need to make sure like the intended user group would carry both the primary user group and secondary user group, and what sort of training would be required. So if it is going to be a neural device, all neural physicians or all neural clinicians can work on the device. They do have their own own cognitive ability to whether to place it or not. So the amount of expertise that would be required would also play a very critical role. And this is where AI lacks to understand the real-time requirement. So that is why I said AI can be used as a suggestive mechanism, and it is going to be the discretion of the HF engineer whether to understand and accept it or not. And the next is intended patient population. So whenever we are involving intended patient population, we need to make sure whether the device is going to cater to adult male, female, or neonate or pediatric. So everything should be listed very well clearly, and what could be the possible health condition and what could be the possible contraindication should also be mentioned. And the next is use environment. So whenever we are considering use environment as per 62366 and HE75, there are a lot amount of factors that needs to be considered. So also apart from the primary setting, whether the device is going to be used at home, hospital, or ambulatory, we also need to consider the environmental condition and also the noise level. So whenever a device is going to be used in a critical environment or an operating room, we also need to understand what is the noise level, so that the noise level is not going to inherently suppress the working of the device. So that is also a very important parameter, and this is where AI lacks to reason out or understand the real-time requirement. And the next is operating principle, where we'll be adding what is the functionality device, how it is going to work, and what could be the possible output that we could gather from the device, and the modes of operation, whether it is going to be automatic or semi-automatic or manual. And the next, we'll be listing the essential performance and critical use scenarios as well, so that we are listing down on what critical scenarios needs to be considered and what could be the failure consequences as well. And the next, we'll be moving into expected frequency of use, whether it is going to be a bedside device that is going to be along with the patient for a period of time, or if it is going to be an implantable device, whether it is going to be implantable for a period of week, or if it is going to be beyond a week. Everything needs to be listed down clearly. And human factors and ergonomic conditions should also be listed down, whether what sort of user interface design, whether it is going to be a touch screen or whether it is going to be button or voice control, and what sort of feedback mechanism that we are going to get should also be listed properly. And the last factor, regulatory and compliance consideration. This is not mandatory on a use specification document, but then that is what I said, AI lacks real-time understanding. So this is going to be the role of the HF engineer to understand and add data as per the real-time requirement. And the next is market research report. So as of now, we have seen how AI can assist on a HF documentation perspective. Let's look into how a market research report can help us to refine a particular design. So the most challenges whenever we are creating a small volume infusion pump, there could be multiple challenges. So addressing these challenges at a very early phase can help us to come out with a best design. So these challenges can be considered, and if we are refining the design at a very early stage, it can give us a better output. And the same with the failures as well. So failures with regard to an infusion pump can be due to a software failure, or it could be a battery related failure, or it could be through power mains as well, or it could be a mechanical malfunction, or it could be a usability failure due to a poor user interface design, and connectivity challenges as well. So evaluating all these parameters, addressing these issues at a very early stage of the device development can help us to bring out the design that is going to meet the user needs, and this can help us to save time and minimize cost during the phases of formative and summative evaluation as well. So AI is a powerful tool, there is no doubt in it, but then it is not going to be a standalone solution. So AI can identify patterns, what could be the possible sources of errors or what could be the possible sources of failure, but evaluating it with the identifying it by the root cause is going to be the area where AI is lacking. AI can highlight usability issues, but it lacks reasoning to explain why users struggle with a particular design. So just for an example, consider if there is going to be a complicated user interface, and if the user finds it difficult to process and input data, it is exactly due to the incorrect or an improper UI design. So, but that particular failure can be due to multiple reasons, whether it is going to be a user fatigue or whether there were some environmental factors that were involved. That could be multiple reasons, or whether it is due to a lack of cognitive ability. There could be multiple reasons. So this is where AI would lack. AI can give us sources of error, but then what is going to be the reason for the particular error would not be identified by AI. So AI driven solutions still require human validation. AI is a complementary partner and not a decision maker. So before we close, let's quickly have another poll. So on your screen, how can AI assist in human factors engineering for medical device design? So we have 4 options: by automating user testing and analyzing interaction data, by replacing human factors engineers entirely, by eliminating the need for usability study, by making design decisions without human input. Yes, most of you have got it correct. By automating user testing and analyzing interaction data, I reiterate again, we are not going to skip formative or any of the usability testing that is going to be performed, but automating it at a very early stage can help us to refine our design, come out with the best possible design, and we can have the amount of time that is going to be spent on refining a particular design can be completely minimized, and the cost involved can also be completely minimized. No, it is not going to completely eradicate usability study. Usability study is mandatory. We can't skip that for any medical device. Usability study is important. That is where we have some inputs on where the device is going to fail. But AI can help us to automate certain tasks, evaluate certain data so that we come out with a better design. So the key takeaway from this webinar would be As we continue to innovate medical device space, the focus on human factors must remain at the forefront of our design strategies, ensuring that products we bring to the market are both effective and user friendly. AI definitely has the potential to revolutionize healthcare in the near future, but there is always a huge space for challenges. So the possible challenges by involving AI could be regulatory and compliance barrier, user trust and adoption challenges. We have data related issues, and real world performance and safety risks are always there whenever we are involving a new technology. So understanding the context, maintaining the ethics, understanding the human psychology, and regulatory compliance are areas where AI lacks intuition and judgment. And this is where AI could be just used as a suggestive mechanism to give us ideas on how we can refine a user experience, bring out and come out with good designs to meet the user needs. And it would always be the role of a HF engineer to understand which could be the best possible design and bring it to market. So we are a strong player in software service and healthcare industry for the past 20 years. We have delivered significant projects for various clients across globe in the field of new product development and legacy device. So these are the areas we are into: QMS documentation, implementation and training, US FDA compliance for 510K PMA and de novo, UMDR compliance, DHF remediation activities, risk management integration, clinical evaluation, biocompatibility consulting, software verification and validation, and human factors and usability evaluation. So in case of any queries, clarification, services, please connect with us and we'll be very happy to clarify on the same. We are here, Mr. Devesh Agarwal, Director at Decos India, and myself, Sridharan. Also, please note a recorded version of this webinar will be available on our website within a week. And also we'll share the same with you on the email which you have registered. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.